It is October 7th, 2022, and it is Bound for Glory Day. And to help me preview this event, I am joined once again by Slam Wrestling's Bloodthirsty Bob Kapur. Bob, how are you?
Hey Blaine, good to see you again. Thanks for having me. I will apologize in advance that my voice might be a bit off. I've got a pretty bad head cold, but luckily not the COVID, but head cold nonetheless.
No worries. So we hope you feel better and wish you a speedy recovery.
Thank you.
So 17 years of Bound for Glory, Bob. It's almost hard to believe that Impact has made it this far, but such an incredible accomplishment when you think about it. Impact has actually been on the air over 3 times longer than WCW Nitro. That is amazing.
Well, I was talking with Scott Demore maybe a month ago or a couple months ago. We were remarking that Slammiversary marked, I think it was Impact, in its various forms, has been around longer than ECW's entire run.
Right. Yeah. It's
Right.
incredible. It's amazing. Like considering all the hard times that they faced, all the network changes, like that's an accomplishment in itself.
Yeah, and it's a credit to the management team. I think for not giving up, the roster for not giving up, and the fans for it's got a grassroots support that are God love them. They've stuck with the company through pretty much every possible challenge you can have in running a company, from ownership changes to losing network TV, right, or losing the TV deals. So and they keep chugging along, right? Give credit to Anthem and the current executives at the company at Impact for for keep putting it out there, keep the fight going.
So, Bob, looking back at the history of Bound for Glory, what have been some of your favorite memories of the event?
Oh my goodness. I'd have to. I mean, there's a lot of good shows. I mean, I think I ran a bus trip for Slam to go
Mhm.
to a Bound for Glory show, and that was a great deal of fun. In terms of the matches, I look back to some of the was it the Monsters Ball matches that we've seen. Um, just wow, that's you put me on the spot, Blaine, because I tend the problem is with me is I tend to not remember what show a match was on,
Mhm.
but more so that's a bit of a challenge just because I see so many like every show, but yeah, I'd have to really think about that one.
Yeah.
It might come to me later. How's that?
For me, I have a pretty photographic memory when it comes to wrestling for some reason. Like I remember specific dates, specific events, matches, etc. Although I have more of a long-term memory than shorter term, I would say. And
Right.
to be honest, like you're not the first. Like I talked to Jordan Grace last week, and she couldn't even she couldn't remember some of her own matches, let alone like some of the history.
Yeah, well,
So
again, it's what 17 years or whatever that
yeah, yeah.
I've been covering, so it's yeah, it's tough.
So tonight's show is in Albany and is one of the big features of this year's event, which has actually become a feature of most recent Bound for Glory events, is the Call Your Shot Gauntlet match. Bob, do you think concepts like this have become a bit cliche nowadays, where the winner basically gets a title match at their leisure?
Yeah, I mean, I think that if it's done well and you use it to um, build the momentum of a rising star, I think the formula can work. And we've seen it done, right, in Money in the Bank matches in WWE, where they have used that to propel CM Punk. Rob Van Dam was a great one
Seth
where he
Rollins.
won the Money in the Bank. Yeah, so so it can be done if you put it on the right person.
Mhm.
If you do it for the sake of comedy or nostalgia, and that that supersedes the actual pushing of the talent and the objective of the match, then they can be mixed bags and they can be kind of dumb.
Mhm. What do you think of this being an intergender match, as it has been for the last few years?
Yeah, so Impact has really embraced that. I'm not a big fan of the intergender matches.
Mhm.
To me, the one exception I thought was Tessa Blanchard when she was competing for the men's
Right.
title, and I actually bought that, and I would probably buy that with Tiano Perazzo as well.
Yeah.
just because I think that they have a talent that's probably much higher than the rest of the the women's
I think
division.
Jordan is up there as well, probably.
Yeah, I think that I can accept those, but you know, when you're looking at a world title situation, um, I don't think that they should be combining them, especially when with some of the mid carders.
Yeah.
Mid carder women are. I don't think that they should be in those matches because there's no way you can believe that they're going to be competing against the world's champion.
Right.
Now, if they did it and said this is for a woman can take select the knockouts title only, or even if there was a secondary knockouts title, which I'm not in favor of.
Mhm.
But if they did something like that, then I think it makes a little more sense. But to say you're eligible for every title, it kind of it dilutes the waters, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think having that choice and for a woman to select the knockouts title over the world title, it kind of puts the two at the same level, kind of. Because you do have that option to challenge for the world title. But I can see your.
I don't think it does, Blaine. I don't think it does, Blaine, because no man would ever choose to take the knockouts title.
That's true. Yeah.
Right. A woman would easily say, "I'll take on the world's the men's world champion," but a guy would never say, "I want the knockouts title." Well, shot.
I don't
So
know.
I don't
Cody
think
Deaner, Cody Deaner is a former knockouts champion. He's on. But I can see your point though. Like if you were to put like Ronda Rousey or Shayna Baszler against Roman Reigns, that I totally believe that scenario. But Liv Morgan, that's a whole different story.
Yeah, Zelina Vega, right? It just doesn't. Optically, it doesn't work.
Yeah. Who do you see as having the most potential in this match as a potential star building character?
So this is one that even for my slam picks, I said I don't know because Bound for Glory is a case where you often bring back people for a surprise, and I think that this might be a situation where they do that. Maybe open the forbidden door and bring someone in,
right,
and have them compete and even win. And if it's again someone with a big enough name and history with the company, they could probably do that.
Mm-hmm.
Like it wouldn't surprise me. It would be great to see the last entrant be Samoa Joe or Christopher Daniels and come back in, and take that opportunity. But so I'm a bit wishy-washy on this one.
You know what? Now that you mention that, considering who the champion is, I can see them even doing like an Ethan Page.
Yeah, that's a great story right there too. And it's not like he's being particularly well used on the other show. So yeah, I think it would be a great way to tie up the North storyline.
The X Division title is also up for grabs on tonight's show. The Forbidden Door has been opened in that case as AEW's Frankie Kazarian challenges Speedball Mike Bailey. I think this should be an incredible match, but I didn't care for the fact that Kazarian comes in and wins one match and suddenly becomes #1 contender. What did you think of that booking?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're doing it again for some nostalgia, but I think to earn a title shot, you should put your time in, build it up, and kind of show that quest towards winning the title. Now Kaz is someone who probably can cruise on his credentials, but I think it's a better story if it's someone in-house who's earned the opportunity a little more convincingly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was a little surprised that they didn't insert Kenny King into that picture just because of the whole Honor No More storyline building, and of course the two Honor No More or the three Honor No More participants in the featured matches on the card. I mean, Kazarian I think would be a better match, but Kenny King would definitely be the better story.
Yeah, I mean, they might do something like a three-way, right? They could set that up in the pre-show or before the match and do a three-way because I think that would even be even more exciting. But even one-on-one, I think Kaz and Mike Bailey are going to deliver.
Mm-hmm. Do you think Kazarian not being an Impact talent kind of telegraphs the outcome of the match, and does that affect your enjoyment either way?
Well, it does to some degree, yeah. I mean, if I think that I know who's going to win, then yeah, obviously it takes away something. But that's the beautiful part of wrestling, and that they could easily surprise me, in which case, oh my God, like now I like it even more than I thought I would going in. I don't think that's going to happen. I think Bailey wins because I think that there's still more for him to do. But yeah, they could surprise everyone and do this. Just why not? They've done it before.
I think what impresses me the most out of this scenario, and also the tag title match and knockout match, is that unlike most years, it's not like where you throw like multiple people in a single match just to get everybody on the card. These are actual like one-on-one or two-on-two type scenarios.
Yeah, it's good. I guess they're going to probably pack in everyone in the gauntlet match to make up for it, because there's a lot of people who aren't on the card who probably should be somewhere,
right?
Especially if you're going to be doing, if this is what they call their Super Bowl, then yeah, there's you want everyone to get the payday at least.
The Honor No More faction has finally started to build momentum as of, say, about 2 months ago, I would say, with the Kingdom winning the tag belts. But do you think it's too little, too late, or do you still think there's hope for the group at this point?
I think there's hope for it. I mean, I'm a big fan of Taven and Bentley. I think there's some interesting stuff that's happening with PCO. That guy's one of my favorite people to watch on TV on any wrestling show.
Right.
And with Vincent there, kind of protecting him against Eddie Edwards, who's got the mistrust. So I think that it's kind of similar to the Bloodline storyline with Jey Uso and Sami Zayn, but I think it works for different reasons on both shows. So I kind of like the dynamic. I'm not sure that I don't think it was too late because Honor No More didn't lose every match at the beginning, right? If they lost every match and all of a sudden the flip is or switch is flipped, and then they started winning everything, it wouldn't be as believable. But the way they've done is they were winning matches, so it kind of led to the logical conclusion of them winning those titles.
Yeah, but to me, it kind of seemed like 50-50 booking in a way, because they did end up losing some of the bigger matches, like the 10-man at Slammiversary they lost, and I think one other match before that. So it's kind of, I mean, it's kind of like 50-50 for me. Like I'm still kind of on the fence with them.
Right.
So the Kingdom, as you mentioned, they will be challenged by the Motor City Machine Guns at the event for the tag titles. The mere fact that the Guns are in this match makes it a must-see for me. But I was kind of hoping for FTR to walk through that Forbidden Door, and even the contenders match between the Guns and Aussie Open, I think would have been a bigger title match. What do you think of this match selection particularly?
Yeah, I put it this way. I would love to see FTR in any type of match. I'm sorry that the Briscoes aren't still with Impact, because I think that those two teams elevate any division. Which is not to say that I'm not a fan of the Guns, right? Those two, Sabin and Shelley, God, they look younger than when they first started. And they still put on incredible matches. So I think this is going to be a real banger of a match.
Yeah.
I don't think that I'm actually thinking that, and there's rumors that Taven and Bentley might be on their way out, that the contracts might be expired. But I still think that, and TNA or Impact has done this as recent with the Good Brothers, they kept the titles on someone who wasn't contracted. I'm expecting the same thing here.
So you are expecting them to hold on to the belts, or are you expecting?
I think Honor No More wins.
In addition to the men's titles, the women's tag titles will also be defended on the card, as the team of Deonna Purrazzo and Chelsea Green will be challenged by Decay members Taya Valkyrie and Jessica. Two-part question here. Firstly, what did you think of the whole Havoc transformation into Jessica? And also, because it seems like they've been teasing lately a Rosemary heel turn, do you think that has kind of taken the focus off of the match?
I think it has, but I think that's the whole anything to do with Decay and the transformation of Havoc, the insertion of James Mitchell when they get into the sort of the supernatural things, it takes away the believability, right? It becomes a separate universe. So I'm not a big fan of combining that separate universe with these, with major implications, like title implications.
Mhm.
I also don't know. I think the match again will be good because I think that Taya is one of the best women wrestlers in the world. She's going in there with Deanna. I think that those two are, like, again, better than pretty much anyone else. If they resist the temptation to turn into a sideshow and keep it just a wrestling match, I think it'll be great. I don't think they'll be able to resist the temptation. I'm expecting that the tension that you mentioned between Rosemary and Jessica will it'll manifest here and it'll cost them the win.
So what kind of bothers me about this tag title scenario is that this match was bumped from the main show at the last Impact Plus special. So it kind of suggests like it's not good enough to be on a main card of an Impact Plus special, but it's good enough to be on the card of Down for Glory. Like that doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, I can't comment on what they, why they decided to do it. Might have been even travel issues or something, but it could have been they didn't have time because I think the last show was pretty long anyway. So moving it here, and you got to, again, you're trying to find a place for everyone on the card. I don't have a big problem with that, but I don't read that into it as much as you did.
I think there is definitely a lot more potential in Deanna and Chelsea as a team. Assuming that we do get a title change here, though, do you expect the pairing of Taya and Jessica to be anything long term?
No, I think that anything that they're doing right now is just to set up, as you said, either a heel turn by Rosemary or maybe a heel turn by Taya, right? Who's just gonna go back to her when she was like the Knockouts champion.
Right.
And that would be, I think, a better direction because I don't really buy her with Jessica and Rosemary anyway. Again, it goes back to my comment about keep the serious stuff a little distance from the sillier stuff.
Mm-hmm. What may not be long term, though, is the current run of Impact veterans, let's call her Mickie James. And I say veteran because I think legend may be a little loosely defined for that one. As you know, I've addressed this in the past. I like Mickie as a performer, but to me, she hasn't really made much of an impact, pardon the pun, to achieve legendary status. Where does she rank for you in that regard?
Well, legend is such a term that's thrown about these days, right? Anyone who's no longer with the company can be considered a legend in some companies. Mm-hmm. I think that she's certainly made her mark in Impact. I think that I wouldn't say that she's been, if I think of the Mount Rushmore of knockouts, I wouldn't put her on that mountain.
Right.
But to say she's not a legend, I don't know, right? It's a tenuous definition anyway. But she's had some good matches, and even in the past, since her coming back, I think she's been better than most, and better than she has before.
Yeah, I agree with that. I did like the Texas Death match she had with Deanna earlier this year, that for sure. And she'll be putting her career on the line against Mia Yim. Do you see this being the end of the road for her?
No, absolutely not. I don't think that they've really used Mia well enough to seem like a credible threat to Mickie James. And I think the broader storyline of Mickie retiring when she loses on the way to a Knockouts championship match, that's the way the story should end, is culminate with that match. Either she wins and then loses it to someone, or I think it's better you do the Rocky ending where she gets that match and then she loses in the main event, right, for that title.
Right.
It's Ric Flair, Shawn Michaels again, right?
Yeah, exactly. Who would you put in that spot to finally end her career then?
Boy, oh boy, I have no idea. I'd like to see someone, with history, but I don't think Trish Stratus is going to be wrestling for Impact soon. Maybe it's someone like Masha Slamovitch who, because I'm jumping ahead, but I think she's going to be a heck of a champion, and putting down someone like Mickie James is just going to be a great, feather in her cap moving forward. And that's paying back, right? I think that's much more paying back than if Mickie to lose to Mia Yim, who I don't see they have major plans for her.
Exactly. Like I can see somebody like Chelsea Green. I think she's improved significantly since, and Chelsea was not somebody that I was a fan of. I was ready actually to pick her as my worst of for the year. This was back in like January, February already. I had already pegged her as my worst of, but she's improved drastically in the last year. So I can't really say that anymore. But I can definitely see her being somebody to put in that spot. But as you mentioned with Masha Slamovitch, I think there is a couple of stories to tell there, whether she wins the title or not. I think if she loses, it's a great way to continue her momentum by having her end Nikki's career. But if she wins, then it adds to the story of Nikki going after the title.
Yeah, yeah, no, that makes sense. I prefer that. Yeah, I think she should win and go on to beat Nikki, because that she's like a, I don't want to say she's a Brock Lesnar by any means, but she's the closest thing they have right now to a Brock and the Undertaker, right?
Right.
Like legend versus dominant champ, and I think that they've booked her in a way that people would buy her beating Jordan and then beating Mickey.
Yeah, you mentioned the whole Rocky reference there. I mean, she's like in the Ivan Drago there.
Yeah, yeah, very much.
These and as we're talking about it, the women's matches just continue on the show as we have the knockout singles match on the line, the title match with defending champion Jordan Grace taking on Masha Slamovitch. I thought Slamovitch had a tremendous hardcore match last week with GCW's Alley Catch. But this is kind of a different flavor of match. Does it seem kind of like a styles clash to you a bit?
Well, I think it's going to be power, because Jordan Grace is level to power against and Masha. I wouldn't say she's not powerful. She's just a little more tenacious, right? Like she fights like a Wolverine. I see it.
Right.
So I think it's going to be an interesting, like this could be, to use the slobber knocker term, this could be it. And I'm looking forward to it. But because I think this could be one of the more hard hitting matches if they really give it their all.
I mentioned I talked to Jordan last week, and she brought up a couple of dream opponents for her. One of those was Rhea Ripley, and the other one was one of your personal favorites, Jade Cargill. Does this match feel like a dream match to you, or is there another title match that you would have booked instead using current talent?
Well, I don't think that this is a dream match. I think it's a good showcase for. I think it should be a good showcase for Masha, and the closing angle they did last night, where with the table, I think was a good way to promote this match. In terms of dream matches, I'd love to see. Again, I'm such a big fan of Deanna Purrazzo against Masha, but there I think is where you see a true styles clash, right? But the story in that match would be really incredible too, right? Because you've got Deanna who's going to use her technique to take on this brawling monster. Well, I wouldn't say monster, but brawling, vicious attacker. So I think that could be a pretty cool story in the ring.
And how do you see this one playing out? You think we're getting a new champion here?
I think we are. I think the momentum is hot, and they should keep pushing Masha right, with nonstop. Because the loss isn't going to necessarily hurt Jordan, because I think she can always recover, and they can rehabilitate if a loss. But I think if you stop Masha now, I think that freezes her momentum.
Right, but my argument was Jordan did win the title back at Slammiversary, so she's had it a few months, but she hasn't had an overly impressive run, I think. So I can see her. I can see her winning this one, and then they kind of continue the feud, maybe with a gimmick match at the next pay-per-view.
Yeah, I mean that's decent booking as well. It's, to me, I would say this is one of the cases where strike while the iron's hot. Mm-hmm. And if you wait 3 months for to do it again, I mean, last night people were chanting her name when she put Jordan through a table, right? The fans are getting into the booking of her, so why not roll with it, right? Once you have her lose, then it just becomes, all right, it's a stutter. But then if you have her beat Jordan later, what was the point of having her lose the first match?
That's true. Yeah. And then, of course, the closing out the show will be the big one for the Impact World title between Josh Alexander and Eddie Edwards. I don't know about you, Bob, but to me, this whole scenario just feels flat. The match being announced did nothing for me personally, and the build hasn't been great, especially considering that the build, especially compared to the build for the Eric Young match at Slammiversary. And then on top of that, I think attaching your world champion to a failing angle like All Honor No More doesn't really do him many favors. What have you thought about the overall build here and the booking?
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess it depends on how much you like Eddie Edwards,
Mhm.
right? Because I think Josh has proven himself to be a good champion and can have a good match with just about anybody. The problem in this case is that you might have a good match, but there's no sizzle, and I
Right.
think that's
Yeah, that's
because,
exactly my point.
as you said, right, they haven't really built a lot. Like the heat between Josh and Eric Young, as you mentioned, was great. This one is just Eddie is sidetracked with the Honor No More stuff.
Mhm.
Josh really hasn't. They've kind of referenced, "Oh, you should have joined us," but what? Like, there was no logical reason for him to join. He has no connection with Ring of Honor other than I think some spots that he did in Toronto. Um, so yeah, I'm not feeling it as much. I'm not wild about Eddie as champion. I think it'd be a step backwards for the company because we've already seen it, and he's beaten. He's already had the matches. Where I think with Josh, you can get some different matches and different styles, and I think you'll see better in ring product. Frankly, right? Not a knock on Eddie, but I think Josh is better than him in the ring,
Yeah,
and
for sure.
I think that that's the way to do it. I don't think that I'm not as down on as you are on the Honor No More storyline, but I can I
Mhm.
could see that Eddie seems like a B player compared to Josh.
Yeah.
Even without the association with a Honor No More.
Yeah, I just think he was a very poor choice of a leader for this group. I just think you need a strong talker, and he's not somebody that I would particularly call a strong promo.
Yeah, I agree with that for sure. And I don't know like who they could have gotten that would have been better, but there was likely a few candidates. Heck, even Kenny King is a good talker.
Right.
So he could have easily done it. So it's hard, right? Eddie, they have. I think Maria's a pretty good talker as well, but they've given Eddie the mic more often than not, and I don't know if that was a great idea.
Right. Yeah. And you know what I think they could have done, because and they kind of dropped the ball here, but maybe because of the injury, it didn't pan out that way. And not that he's a particularly good talker too, but I think with like somebody like a Jonathan Gresham, would have been a much bigger match for this type of scenario, especially considering the momentum he had built from Ring of Honor.
Yeah, yeah, and again, they've got some other people who they could have. I would have actually liked to see, um, maybe Kerry Silkin come into play in this a little more,
Yeah.
and he could have done something and maybe being a leader. And Kerry's, he's I don't know if he's a great promo, but he's an interesting character, right? And I think he would have actually added some more depth to the faction.
Right. Or bring in like a Prince Nana or somebody like that. So somebody who's
Yeah, well, yeah, they could have gone with a couple better choices. The match, I think it will be good,
Mhm.
and probably very good. But as I said, steak and sizzle.
Absolutely. So, Bob, we have a few more minutes, and usually when I do these pay-per-view predictions, I tend to do this. I have this feature on my show called the Fantasy Forecast, which is where I basically predict the whole card for the next big event, the next pay-per-view. So, considering
Okay.
some of your picks for the winners here, where do you? We'll just focus on the title matches for this particular fantasy forecast. Where do you see them going next with the X Division title?
Well, there's again so they're bringing in some people, some surprises. I think that Mike Bailey is still going to have the title, obviously by then. Um, I'm thinking there's going to be someone either new that we haven't seen or that is, um, you know, yet to, maybe will debut tonight.
Mm-hmm. And then of course the tag titles, you picked the Kingdom to keep the belts.
Yeah.
So, but it doesn't seem like there's too much competition in the tag team division. Do you see that Forbidden Door opening as well? Where do you see them going next?
Yeah, I think they kind of need to do something to shake it up, right? It wouldn't surprise me to see the Bullet Club guys start getting, the title
Right.
shots, right?
Good point.
Ace Austin and Chris Bay, or even some of the other, the fellows from the Bullet Club. So I think that's the next feud is faction versus faction, Bullet Club against Honor No More.
Right. I mean, they did kind of open the Forbidden Door previously with the Gorillas of Destiny, where they got kicked out
Mm-hmm.
of the Bullet Club. So that I guess they could revisit that. They could bring them back in. They could always. I don't know what the status of the Briscoes are, but if they're available, certainly I'd like to see that match as well.
It's staggering to me that they're not on TV somewhere.
And then, of course, the knockout title, you picked a new champion in Masha Slamovitch. Do you think they go immediately to the Mickey James angle?
Yeah, if they don't do it at the next one, then I think that's Slammiversary. But I think the next one is fine. There's only so many people she can beat before she has to get a title shot.
And do you
And
expect, assuming that they do that
I'm
angle,
sorry.
sorry, if you assuming they do that angle, title versus career, do you expect that to main event the show?
I would hope so. Yeah, like that's a big moment, and it should be. If you're really going to play it up to reflect her legend status, then you owe her that respect.
Yeah, and then so then the heavyweight title situation. I don't believe you picked a winner. So if you could pick a winner and then decide ultimately where we go from there for Hard to Kill.
Sure, I think Josh retains.
Okay.
And hopefully it's not to do with interference or honor no more infighting. Hopefully it's just a good definitive win by a champ. After that, where he moves, I know you're not a big fan of Steve Macklin, but I am, and I think that they should be pushing him into the upper tier and main event slot against Josh. I think that'd be a really good
Yeah,
match.
see, I'm leaning more towards. I think they could still do something with Eric Young because they seem to be revitalizing the whole his whole Violent by Design group. So
Right.
I think that might be a direction to go, and possibly maybe turn Sammy heel again. I'd like to see him be a challenger. Or as I said, they could definitely open the Forbidden Door to Ethan Page. That would be a great story to tell.
That I yeah. The more you talk about that, the more I'm interested in seeing that happen.
Mhm.